Okay, so last day it's been pretty rough. I have felt really bad last night, and this is a thing with depression. It's maybe many mental illnesses that they're not linear. Often they can go up and down. They can fluctuate, and I have a lot of pressure on me, but you can't live in fear, and that's something I have to repeat to myself. You're trying to dig out of a deep hole. You don't want to live in fear, and you you have to remind yourself that this is a real issue. It's a real problem. A lot of us, with facing this sort of thing, we feel guilt, we feel shame, we feel things like that because of the way society will project things on you, like laziness, or they'll try to project that you can change your thoughts instantly. You can just think it don't exist. And I was almost in tears last night. This happens a lot, when you get your depression acts back up, and you're behind on bills, you're behind on things, and you don't know what's going to happen, and then you start internalizing what some people have said to you before that's not accurate, but still you can internalize that stuff, and feel like a POS. People try to make you feel like a piece, and you have to really, that's where therapy has helped me, because when I talk to my therapist, of course, I'm reminded that that's all bullshit. And that she always points out to me the progress I am making. And it's in baby steps. If you're in a deep depression, if you get yourself out of bed, that could be an accomplishment. If you take a shower, that could be an accomplishment. If you go outside, go to the store, that could be an accomplishment. When you're in a deep depression, little things become accomplishments. And I am going to actually start a new job. I did get hired somewhere, and I'm not going to say what it is yet, because I want to make sure, with everything I've been through with work and everything I've been through with this depression, I want to make sure that's going to work out. But it seems like it could be okay for me. I'll just say it's a place that I went to because I thought it's something I can handle with the current state of my mental health. So so far, the 3 people I've encountered there have been very friendly, and it seems like it's not too much maybe for me to handle as far as hours and trying to get myself back in a place that I can try to deal with life. It's also not in the former industry I was working in, which was like tourism. I worked in attractions. I live near a tourist town, and I was so burned out on it, with just the way people are. Not only the employees in those places, but the people coming into those places. Honestly, there's a lot of you deal with a lot of shit with people coming into those tourist attractions with entitlement. That's something else in society's burned me out really bad too. People's entitlement, just the sheer ugliness of people, how they treat others in these places, how they treat employees, how they just no respect, no matter sometimes how nice you are to these people. The biggest example I could give of that is during COVID. It was so bad. I worked in a wax museum, and this place also had other attractions. It had a mirror maze and a haunted house, and I worked in those too. And it had a 5D ride, but during COVID, most of us were laid off and we got paid while we were laid off, but coming back, a lot of companies, they wanted you to wear a mask, and there was a lot of these mandates still going around at the time. It was just a funky time. I'm sure some of you can relate to it. Some of you probably know what I'm talking about, but it was different for each state here in America, and I'm sure it was different for other places in the world. But some of the ugliest stuff, the most vile stuff I could see customers do came from that era, from COVID, from the aftermath of COVID. People just not wanting to wear the mask, not only not wanting to do what companies were asking of them at that time to get back out on tour or to be able to travel again, but they just would go on about their American rights and go on a preaching rampage of they go on a preaching rampage about that and how we're stripping them of their rights, and want to get into almost fist fights with you, and we were just doing our job, coming back to work, doing what we were told. It was awful. It was just so bad. And my take on it was, well, no one asked you to travel in the aftermath of something like that. Maybe you should have waited a little while till it all calmed down, until all these mandate things were going to be gone. And I'm not taking a position on what was good or bad. I'm just saying, this is the way it was. This was something that common sense would tell you at the time. There was going to be, the world wasn't up and running in a complete way that it used to run. So maybe you should have put your vacation off. Maybe you should have, if you didn't like the way things were going to be, or you could just realize there were going to be some things that were going to be different, and you just had to adapt to them. So that was also one of the biggest things. And I think a lot of people, if you had depression during that time, mental illness of any kind, it was going to be amplified and cause you more trauma during that time period. I know that happened to me as well. That was just more on top of my plate throughout things I've already dealt with or was dealing with too at that time. And it was pretty bad. So now I'm going to try this new thing on Friday and see if in fact that'll be something I can handle and keep trying to move forward, because I'm in a scary place. I'm behind on things. I had lived off savings, living off credit, and I do my best to try to stay in a higher vibration regardless of that, but it can be difficult. I have tried to do some spiritual practice. So I'm not talking at all about religion. I'm just talking about like things I've done in the past that I know can help, like clearing your energy, smudging. Smudging seems to lighten the air, is what I found. Out of my experience, it just seems to do something to your environment as far as making things feel lighter. And then clearing your energy can be done with just intention. It don't have to be anything complicated. It could be just saying you want to clean out your home of anything that's not serving you, basically. Anything that could be dragging you down. You're just trying to clear that out with an intention of thought. Because what I found, if you let that stuff pile up, you don't ever clear it, which I've done before. It just seems to drag you down even more with depression and things like that. It just seems to even be more of a weight or more of an anchor on you. So when you clear energy, then you're able to focus a little bit more on bringing in a better frequency. You're able to bring in, maybe if you can get up in that vibration a little bit, bring it up a little bit, then that can open some doors. And I think that's what's happened with this job calling me. Little things can happen. It's not like you should expect a ton of money just to fall in your lap all of a sudden. There's something magical like that. Just poof, here it is, necessarily. But you can have more opportunity present itself and have more doors open. So we'll see what's going to happen. This has been a long road for me to climb out of. Yesterday, because I was feeling these internalized feelings of shame, guilt, which again, you shouldn't feel that when you're going through these sorts of things. It's a medical issue, really, like anything. It's just people can't physically see it. But it does affect you physically. Like it affects my stomach and it affects my body. It seems to cause me like an autoimmune issue sometimes, I would say. It's never been fully diagnosed, but I've had issues with ulcers. I've had body aches. But when I'm calmer, in a better state of mind, that stuff can subside, and I don't have it at all. Fortunately for me, at 49, I've stayed in enough decent shape to where, regardless of all this, I've managed to somehow still go to the park occasionally and run. Not as much as I normally would, but I have managed to not overeat myself into too much weight. I like to be smaller. Usually I weigh probably around 135, probably about 145 right now. But still, I think to myself, well, you've stayed around that. You're not letting yourself blow up. I've done that in the past. There's been times in my life I was like 180 pounds. I'm 5'6", so you get me to 180 pounds at 5'6", and you know I'm looking pretty plump, you know. So I like to be smaller, and but one thing at a time. One of the things I indulge in when I'm depressed is chocolate ice cream. I can eat half a tub of Moose Tracks dark chocolate because it's one of those things that can calm me for a brief period of time. But the thing is, I won't eat much of anything else. So I'm still aware of a certain amount of my calorie intake. I've had to get free food recently. I haven't had to do that in ages. Where I go to see the therapist, they give me some food as well because I've let myself get down to a point where, like I said, I'm behind on things and I'm struggling to come back up, but I'm trying, you know, and that's the key, you know. I was stubborn. I should have had therapy probably a couple of years ago, but everything happens in a process for each one of us. We don't always make a decision maybe when we should make it, but then again, maybe you could say things happen in the time they're supposed to happen. So that wasn't the time for it to happen. And if you go to therapy, you have to be honest. I mean, if you decide you're having issues and you're in a dark place, and I have been in a very dark place. Again, if you're watching this and haven't watched my other videos, I've had thoughts of unaliving. Yeah, I say unaliving because YouTube don't like certain words necessarily. Ideation, you know, things like that of not what's this life for, you know. And I still go through that. I went through it last night again. I don't make plans, but I do get tired. I get tired, you know, and I can't tell you that's went away. It hasn't. Because when you go to therapy after 20 something years, you've had all these traumas happen. There's no quick fix to that. But if you're in a place that I've been in, you're in a very dark place and you just know any little thing can be an accomplishment. If you decide to go get help, that's an accomplishment. Just to be able to walk into a place and say, and be honest, because if you're not going to be honest, there's just no point. But they can't help you if you're going in there not telling them the things that are really going on. And that can be hard. It was hard for me. But when you go in there, you realize, oh wow, it turned out better than I could have expected. It has, with who I have that cares about me there, and she really. It's been small steps, but there has been a little bit of progress. But if you're going to go to therapy and you make that decision, just know you need to make the decision to be honest and just tell them what's really going on, because that's the only way they're going to be able to delve into things and try to get you to a place you need to be. As far as meds, I don't take meds. We've discussed maybe taking meds, but I'm trying to gauge that session to session. If I stop making any progress, if I just climb back toward going, if I go backwards and start to go back into a total hole, then yes, I would probably take something for the depression to try to bring me up. And I'm trying to do it naturally because I know that can help. And I've had enough metaphysical or spiritual experiences to know that natural vibration can, if you're taking some actions and you work on that natural vibration, it can bring you up, and you're not having some drug in you do that in an artificial way. And I'm not saying don't help people. Some people, you gotta have it, or at least have it for a temporary time. And if I took it, that's what would happen. I'd probably take it for a little while. I have taken them in the past, but I just have a different view on them now. You can get hooked on that to where you rely just on the artificial drug, when I feel like sometimes it might just mask still a lot of the stuff going on inside of you. So I took Lexapro back years ago when I had a breakup one time, and I had some things going on, and this was many years ago. I was in a bad situation, and I took it for a brief time. I might have took it a few months, and it did lift me. It's the only one that ever did. Years before that, for instance, I took Paxil, and it made me more self-destructive and made me not care about anything. And I would do things that I didn't care whether it destroyed me or not. It was pretty rough, pretty brutal. And Prozac was similar to that. I took as a teen, and it made me violent. So sometimes you can get these crazy side effects, and then sometimes the side effects can mess with your body too. Sometimes they can mess with your stomach. They can, everyone's different, but sometimes they mess with your sexual drive, things like that. They can mess with you in different ways. So that's another reason I'm reluctant. But that has been discussed, and it's a tool that's there if I'm not still moving forward. And I feel like I'm trying to be very objective as I go along as to what I need. But the talking has helped. The encouragement has helped. Having someone that reminds me that many suffer with what I go through, and it is a real epidemic for people, and it is a medical thing, and it is something that people still, unfortunately, in this world today, they stigmatize, and they want to shit on it. And oftentimes they've got a world of problems, but they mask it. Some of the same people that say all this crap, they'll mask it. Um, and it sucks. I kind of relate myself to, uh, I can find relation in people that I see, like, say, Layne Stayley. I don't know if a lot of you know who he is. If you follow rock music, um, Alice in Chains. Layne Stayley was the lead singer of Alice in Chains, and he uh, passed away. I forget if it was 2002 or 2003. I think he was about 35, somewhere in that age. But the difference with me and him is, well, of course, he was this famous rock guy, but he had addiction to hard drugs for years. But I can relate to what happened in a lot of ways with him because he had this deep depression. He had this melancholy about him. And of course, if you listen to her music, it's very much in the music. And he got to a point where he just self-isolated in the last couple of years of his life, or more even. He just locked himself up in his condo in Seattle. And I can relate because I can just relate to somebody like that because I've done this the last 4 to 5 years. I've stayed as isolated as I can. And the difference too with me and him is he's a millionaire. So, but here's the thing too. Okay, he's a millionaire, could do anything he wanted. He could. So for people who spin this stuff about, oh, it's just in your mind, you can shut it off, you can do this or do that. Well, the guy could have went out and traveled anywhere at any time. He didn't have to stay locked up. Basically, he was just taking cash, withdrawing cash, keeping it in his apartment so he could give to his dealer to bring him drugs. Because he's so deeply depressed, he just stayed locked up in his condo doing his drugs, playing video games mostly. And his girlfriend, his off and on girlfriend, I think her name was Demry. She had passed away before he went downhill like this too. She also had issues with drugs, and then she had a heart issue, and she passed away. And I'm sure that sunk him deeper into depression. And I believe the last song Alice in Chains did was called Died. And I have it on here in my playlist. Actually, I have Alice in Chains playlist on here, and Died's on there. I think it was the last song released from when Layne was with the band. And it was about her and how she left him all alone. And it's very sad. But I can just relate to people like this because you don't want to be around anybody. You just want to be left alone. You just want to do your thing. I didn't get on hard drugs, but I've had bouts with alcohol, with addiction, with corn. And again, I say corn because of words on YouTube, certain words that YouTube don't like. But, I've had that addiction as well. Things to dissociate. Some people do it with hard drugs. Some people do it with alcohol. Some people do it with corn. Some people do it with video games all the time. They get caught up in one thing all the time. Too much of anything is going to be rough. As far as drugs, I've had over-the-counter drug addiction like years ago that almost killed me. Stimulants, drinking energy drinks all the time, taking strong stimulants from places like GNC or places that sell stuff for working out. But a lot of those things have a lot of strong stuff in them, and you can get addicted to them because they make you feel high. A lot of them make you feel high, really up, and you want to stay on that up because you get depression. That's how it was for me back then too. I was going, if I didn't wasn't on that stuff, I would just sink like a rock. But I got to where, because I have body issues too, body dysmorphia. A lot of times, I believe that I went through a stage where I was drinking, not eating, and taking these drugs, and almost killed me. I was in the hospital 2 weeks. So the only major difference with me and somebody like Layne is I just didn't have the money like him, to where, if you don't have the money, just to, maybe that's a good thing because it forces me to have to try to work out of this hole. Because if you don't have the money to stay isolated, you just end up homeless at some point. That can happen. Um, so anyway, yeah, had a bad day yesterday, and that's how depression goes. I guess I'll go back to that. Just that's how it goes. Sometimes mental illness in general, it can come up and down. It can be a roller coaster. There's no quick fix. So I saw I get on here talk a little bit about it, and see how this thing's gonna go on Friday. And if that's going well, I'll talk about it. It's actually an interesting choice I made. So we'll see how it's going to work before I say more about it. It is different than anything I've done. So anyway, yeah, I'll talk to you all later. Bye.